Hello and welcome to the show. So, I am changing things up with Tuna Tuesday, as you probably saw last week. I'm changing it now to sort of a fail race versus the community. So we give you guys a chance to come and race with us, and I'm kind of getting away just from purely tuning. I mean, we will still do proper racing, tuning for certain car classes, but it also gives us a bit of freedom to maybe do some GTA stuff, Formula 1, Forza Horizon, just sort of do some different stuff. Rather than just sort of outright racing. But today's one is outright racing. It is A-Class at Silverstone because a lot of people have cars already built. So, the first race we go with, this is the serious race. This was sort of the serious cars. Quite which car to focus on from the start line, I didn't really have a clue, so I picked one in the middle, and I ended up picking a group of Lancia 037s. There was a large group of them. There's 4 of them all grouped together. The grid was on random as well, so they all ended up together. Anyway, as we come into the first corner, it had actually been a relatively clean start. You saw one of the red Lancias spun out on its own accord, I believe. I don't think it was helped from what I said. However, the Martini Lancia may have got a bit of a nudge from the Camaro, and well, when you've got sort of 15, 16 cars flying through, it can kind of be a little bit problematic. At the front, TJ was driving the Porsche 911, and since he'd started on pole, he had got a relatively good sort of start, and he had the advantage of having nothing to really worry about. As you can see, there is rather a large angry horde of cars behind him. He's also got it in the correct colours, which is good, black and orange. I like to see that. His Porsche was actually pretty fast, I have to say. I raced against him when he was just testing it out, and it is a pretty damn quick car. Me, well, I had started in 14th position on the back row, which was, yeah, interesting. It meant I have to be very careful for this first lap. As you can see, I am battling with a bright pink Ferrari. Interestingly, that Ferrari is the one that started alongside me. In fact, I think he started 15th. And yeah, we managed to get through very sort of well. There hadn't been too many collisions, and despite the fact starting last, I think we were already sort of up into 10th and 11th. As you see there, I managed to get past. At the front, there was a Porsche, 2 Ferraris, and amazingly, a Pontiac Firebird was in the middle of it all. I'm going to be honest, it's no surprise to see Porsches and Ferraris and lightweight sports cars at the front. I was surprised to see this Pontiac at the front and actually sort of holding its own against these cars, because it is essentially a big heavy muscle car, and while sure it can probably be enlightened, I doubt it will be anywhere near as light as the Ferraris that are hovering around it. I also like to see there is a Ferrari 360 Challenge Stradale in there. I really do like that car, so I'm glad to see that, even though the Pontiac has now just lost a couple of places. I was in, well, in the kind of a battle of my own. There was a group of 4 at the front, and there was a group of 4 behind them. The first 8 positions were all relatively close together. In the second group, an Audi TT, this rather distinctive Lancia, and there was me battling with a humongous Camaro. That thing, like, we're all driving fairly small cars. Even the Firebird, which is a kind of a muscle car, still relatively small compared to that blooming Camaro. Whenever you see it in shot, it looks absolutely massive. It was quite intimidating driving against that thing. I have to say, he did very well with that, considering, you know, it's definitely not going to be anywhere near as light as the cars we were racing. He was keeping up pretty damn well. Further back, there was an interesting race between an Elan DeLorean and that pink Ferrari again. In the end, the Elan got on 2 wheels, had a kind of spin, and ended up causing a rather unfortunate accident. It's the sort of thing that happens when 3 cars are going wide into a corner, and the Elan then I think got collected by a Delta as well, and is now completely broken. I will point out, damage on simulation, even though the replay went funny with it, and it doesn't actually show up any damage. But yeah, damage is actually on simulation. At the front, there was a change of position, well, kind of briefly, as the Ferrari took the lead, fell off the road, and then was swiftly followed by TJ. The Firebird was trying to go around the outside of all of them, and they pretty much ended up trying to go 4 wide through a corner, which is a little bit scary. I'm going to be honest, I think the Firebird in the end lost out of it, and the Porsche is just about going to regain its lead. The 911 is very fast in a straight line. Of all the cars here, it is probably one of the fastest. The 360 has a little bit of a lunge, and now you end up with, well, about 7 cars, all within a couple of seconds of the leader. They'd been so busy battling each other that me and the Lancia had now managed to catch up, and the Camaro wasn't even that far behind us. This was a really, like, normally when you're racing, it's sort of 2 or 3 people break away, and you can have sort of groups racing, but it's very rare to have this many people this close together, all racing relatively cleanly. There hadn't been too much contact. I mean, there's the inevitable panel rubbing with such huge variety of cars with different strengths and different weaknesses. As we go further in, there was a little bit of a coming together with me and the Ferrari 360. I didn't quite catch it on the cameras, so I'd ended up dropping back, or towards the back of the chain, had the blooming Camaro in front of me again, having to work my way past that car. I have to say, despite, sort of, as I said, there is a huge variety of cars here, as you can see in this shot. In fact, there's battles going on behind us as well. the cars were fairly even. I mean, there wasn't someone who just sort of went to the front and pulled away and vanished. It was really quite good racing. See here, I actually have a bit of an advantage in straight line speed once I'm in the tow. Sort of duck out of the tow and go for a little bit later braking, and I managed to get the move done on the Camaro. Amazingly, I was expecting that Camaro to pull away from me on the straight, but it actually wasn't a huge amount faster. At the front there had been another change of position, and the Firebird somehow had found itself in the lead. Again, this was a real surprise. It's probably one of the big surprises for me of this race. As TJ cuts the corner, I think that's a drive-through penalty. He gained an advantage for falling off the track. I definitely think he should be given a drive-through penalty for that one. Anyway, at the front, the Firebird was in the lead. Did a very good job there of avoiding that crash. He must have seen the Ferrari very, very late there. And now, this is an interesting corner. This is an overtaking spot around this last corner, but it's a very, very tricky one. You don't really want to be in the inside there because, as you can see with the Firebird, he now has the inside line for this part of the corner, which is probably the more important. As you can see, the Ferrari's trying to go around the outside, but you're always going to end up running out of room. So the Firebird can keep the lead. In the background, you can see I've managed to work my way up to 4th. Further back, the Lancia that had sort of taken a whack on the first lap was now battling with the Audi TT. I don't really know what happened to the Audi. This had been up near the front. I must have missed it in the replay cameras, and he was sort of struggling a little bit. Again, as you can see, the Lancia had taken a fair bit of damage. We were only doing a sort of a 5-lap race, so people didn't necessarily want to dive in the pits because you do lose an awful lot of time if you do that. I have to say, despite the damage, that Lancia was still pretty damn quick. As you can see, he's now battling with a... I don't know how much damage the Audi had on it. It could have hit something somewhere, but it certainly wasn't engine smoking. Towards the front, well, there were two battles now going on. The Firebird was manically trying to defend from the Ferrari, and I had managed to catch up with TJ. Now, that Porsche is... it's a tricky car to overtake, as you'll see here. My NSX is pretty quick in a straight line, I have to say. That Porsche is just fast. I was struggling to sort of keep up with it on the straights. Luckily, TJ was having some issues slowing it down, and as he went wide in towards the chicane, I, well, kind of took the free pass. There was a little bit of paint swapping going on there, but, you know, I'll take 3rd position. TJ's race then went from fairly okay to fairly terrible. He tried to have another look at me going through this corner, and he was sort of too far back, ended up running wide on the exit. Didn't notice that there was a Lancia had stuck its nose out the inside. Then there was a little bit of a coming together. Then there was a sort of, I don't quite know what happened there. The replay camera never shows it very well. But there was some sort of argy-bargy, and in the end, the Camaro and TJ's 911 ended up spinning off the track. The Lancia got away with that one okay, I think. I'm not really sure where that ended up. I think he just about got away with it. Amazingly, the Lancia you saw at the beginning that spun off and ended up at the back was now in 4th. That's an impressive drive, I have to say. I think he spun off on his own accord, so he didn't actually take any damage as such, but he managed to work his way up to 4th because, well, we'd all been battling, and even if he did get rather sideways. There's that yellow Lancia, that's where it ended up. I can never find out. There's so much going on in this replay. It was actually really quite hard work, sort of finding out who's where and what on earth's going on, because there really was a huge number of battles, and I'm sure there was stuff going on in different places at different times that I missed. I do apologise, because I just couldn't watch all of it. At the front, the Ferrari had managed to clear the Firebird and was, well, pulling away. It wasn't massively, I have to say. That the Firebird really was a big surprise. However, this Ferrari is incredibly fast. I'm not sure, again, on how much damage it had, but it did do a 2-minute 1 lap with, I presume, some damage because it did scrape a few cars. So that Ferrari is seriously fast. Even if my car, which is now in 3rd, I did suffer a fair bit of damage with scraping with TJ a couple of times and with the 360 challenge that I knocked into. I had got a fair bit of overall aero damage. Even with my car fixed, I think I would struggle to keep up with that Ferrari. It was a good race though. I really did enjoy this race. I was amazed I managed to work my way up to 3rd from starting 14th on the grid. Normally when you're that far back in an online race, it's inevitably going to get caught up in something. But I managed to get through. I don't think any cars finished without damage. Not that I know of. Maybe the Lancia in 4th might have done. I don't really trust the Forza, like if you look at the telemetry on the replays with the damage, because that's so wonky. It's really tricky to see. But as you can see, a Ferrari did a celebratory spin. I crossed the line in 3rd position. I was pretty happy with that. Further back, TJ had slipped to about 7th or 8th, and just on the line you can see that the Camaro managed to get past the 037. That was a very close finish between them two. That Lancia, I think, would have been a lot higher up if it hadn't had the spin at the start with engine damage, because that was very fast as well. So, the first race was over, and it was a fairly good success. So we move on to the challenge race with some more silly cars. As you can see, I am driving the Porsche, whatever, SUV, horrible thing, in a tremendously stupid colour, now has purple wheels. This was the first car in the auction house for A-Class. So I went and bought this one. It cost a ridiculous amount, like 150,000 credits. But there we go. Further back, you may have heard there were some collisions going on, so I sort of changed to cars to see what was going on. A Ferrari 355 ended up going for a little bit of a spin across the sort of sticky stuff. This wasn't the one that drove off at the front last time. This was a different guy driving this car. You also saw an Igo there fell off in the background as well. Daniel had managed to make it for this race. First race he had internet problems. He managed to turn up for the second race, and he was driving a Dodge Charger. Had a little bit of an argument with a bright pink Citroen C1, but he came off better with that. I have to say, this second race, it was interesting to see what cars there were. There is a huge variety of cars. If you just look at this shot, the amount of cars that are going through there. We have got a Dodge Charger racing against Aston Martin Signet. It's not something I was expecting to say. I'm going to be honest. I mean, even for FailRace, saying that's quite quite unusual. Anyway, you would think it was a fairly straightforward fight. However, Daniel managed to sort of miss his braking mark a little bit and ended up going slightly wide, and the Aston Martin Signet is now back in front of him. Now that can't do. We can't have a Dodge Charger being beaten by an Aston Martin Signet. So again, Daniel tries another overtaking manoeuvre. The Aston maybe has a little nudge there and kind of tries to dive up the inside, ends up kind of sliding into the front of the Charger, and the Signet ends up on the grass. Towards the front, I had somehow managed to keep second, but as you can see, this Porsche wasn't particularly fantastic. I'm going to be honest, the BMW that was on pole is just gone at this point. There was absolutely nothing I could do about it. The Porsche was an okay car in a straight line. I mean, it's not surprising. It's got a big powerful engine. I can't remember statistics on it, but it was pretty quick, pretty competitive in a straight line. But it's a huge 4x4. It's never going to be that good through the corners. I was coming under quite a large amount of pressure from this Renault Megane, and tried as I might to defend from it, there really is very little that I could do. In the background, there's a Honda Integra, or is that an Acura Integra? One of the two, crashing into a Mercedes Grosser, because, yeah, that's a common sight on a racetrack these days. As you can see, I tried my best to hold on. I have the straight line speed, but as you can see, coming to this first corner, I'm not really going to be able to defend. I can't brake particularly late because this thing just doesn't stop because it's a large, heavy SUV, and the Renault Megane was eventually passed. But not bad, I'm still in third. The rather bright Integra then made a little bit of a mistake coming into Maggotts and Beckett's and ended up going across the grass, hit the side of a KA. By the way, TJ was the one that's driving that KA. Just about manages to get it under control and gets whacked by, I think that's a Mercedes A-Class, and then there's a County Squire, gets involved and finishes up with clouting into Daniel's Charger. It didn't have the best few corners. I think he's traded paint with like half the field now. Not the greatest start for the Integra. TJ, that's the person I was going to talk. Blooming heck, it's hard trying to talk through this and remember what's going on. TJ is in the KA. He was doing pretty well. I have to say, I swear I don't remember this bit of the race. This race was like, there's a Igo in the background, ignore that. This race was like 4 days ago, 5 days ago. I swear I don't remember TJ's KA being right behind me in like the third lap. I really don't remember this bit, but apparently he was very, very close. That KA was surprisingly fast. They're actually not bad cars, I have to say, the KAs when they are modified. Further back, the Integra was, well, having some issues. As you can see, he's got a smoky engine and clipped the curb a little bit wrong, and he got flicked into the barrier. Not a particularly good place. You don't really want to be there. The Signet collected him. He also didn't pay attention to what was going on and clouted into the Grosser. I think that broke the Mercedes. There's a Citroen C1 that's found the wall in the distance as well. I like how I think we've employed a drunk cameraman. Stop moving, and the sign fell over for good measure. That pretty much killed the Integra. It took a while getting itself back to the pits because that was pretty much 100% damage on that thing. Further up, there was a rather interesting battle developing between a KA, that was TJ, and the Mercedes A-Class. There was a little bit of a collision on a straight. I don't really know how that one happened, but not too clever. There was now a four-way battle for like fourth, I think it was, and Pink Ferrari didn't quite stop in time, and TJ has gone for a spin. Oh, and there's a barrier, and we're going to do some pirouettes in the KA. Oops, save it. No, that's the wall. You're going to get caught now. Well done. So the KA was, well, kind of falling down the order a fair bit. This is another interesting race. Wasn't expecting to see this one. A County Squire against a Ferrari 355. This was a battle for about 5th or 6th, I think it was. County Squire got it a little bit wrong. He can't quite take as much speed through there as a Ferrari can. And ended up going across the grass. Managed to recover it, but lost the place. I have to say, the field was actually spreading out quite a lot in this race. A lot more than it was in the first race. I guess that's kind of partly down to the cars. What have we got going on here? It is a battle between a Mercedes A-Class and Daniel's Charger. There we go. Again, this isn't a battle I was expecting to see. Amazingly, there was some pretty good driving there from the Mercedes, I have to say. It's fending off a Dodge Charger. Well done to you. I can't remember who was in what car. So many to try and remember. Some back markers were causing some problems. There was a broken IGO. In fact, I think it was a drift IGO that someone got out and forgot that it was a drift setup, and there was a broken Citroen. Caused some problems for the Mercedes, as you can see. He has now dropped down the place, and just for good measure, got a whack from the Citroen, and sticky stuff again, and he's gone for a slide. Now you might hear, in the background there was a rather loud crash, so we have to go and investigate that one. And well, it was the poor Ferrari. It just managed to get its way past the county squire and manages to clout into the side of a broken Citroen C1 and goes for a little spin on the grass. So all that hard work getting past the ridiculous Ford estate car didn't really pay off. He ended up dropping back down to I think about 7th or 8th position. At the front, well, the BMW 1M, I think is what this is, or is it? No, I think that's a 1M. I think I know cars. Pretty much was from pole, pretty much drove off with this one. It was a fairly straightforward race. He was not driving a silly SUV or a smart car. It was a good car. I can't remember what his lap times were. I don't think they were massively fast. They're faster than what we were doing. Him and the Megane were doing fairly similar lap times, but because I managed to hold up the Megane, he didn't really ever sort of catch up to him. Megane drove a fairly good race in 2nd position and was far faster than I was. I tried my best with the Porsche, but it's certainly not as quick as that 911 from the first race. I was amazed, to be honest, that I was still in 3rd by the end of this race. I managed to fend off, well, everything. People kind of ended up falling off the road behind me. You might just about see Daniel's Charger in the background, who was in 4th. So, quite a successful race for Team FailRace. And there we go, that was the end of the replay because I was an idiot and forgot to extend the end of race time. Anyway, we move on to race 3, which was another silly race. And as you can see, there are 2 Chrysler PT Cruisers. Daniel was a good sport and decided to have a go with his as well. And yeah, we're going to give these things a run out. There was chaos at the start. You can see cars are falling off the road everywhere. This was, again, really hard to find a camera angle that worked. The Chryslers going side by side into Maggots and Beckett's. There we go. And we've had identical spins. What does that say about the cars? An Alfa's fallen off the road behind me. This was actually a real problem. Trying to get back on the track after you've kind of gone off. As you can see there, I was going back on the track and then realised that there's just piles of cars going past, so you have to sort of wait. So basically, if you go off the track, especially at the start, you're going to end up at the back. There's someone that fallen behind at the start, but I didn't work out who that was. Someone got unlucky at the start. Daniel, who was now sort of about mid-pack, completely missed his braking into the corner at the end of the straight. Not really surprising, because these cars just don't stop, especially after you've been driving cars that do have race brakes. He's a bit unfortunate here to get caught up with a Prius that was having its own little accident, and the Prius ended up off the road somewhere. So yeah, Daniel was now in about midfield. I think he was just behind me. There we go, you can see me in the distance. There's just incredible battles going on. At the front, I believe there was a Dodge Dart, pretty much just drove off from the start line. If you start near the front of the grid, you do have a fairly good chance of doing well, especially when you're in, well, a muscle car and we're in Chryslers. You know, you're going to stand a bit of a chance. But the Dodge Dart pretty much just drove away from the field on this one. Daniel was a little bit unlucky, I'm going to be honest, as we come around on, I think this is still on the first lap. The Prius gave him a tiny nudge, and that sent him round into the barriers, and that doesn't help matters. Now that dropped him, I think, back towards the back of the field. I don't know if he's, well, I assume he suffered some aero damage, not sure if he suffered any engine damage. Not a lot happened for the next few laps. The field was fairly spread out. This was the most interesting thing. Someone's controller was weird. I don't know if it turned off or if they pressed the guide button by accident or something. They just about managed to save it before they got into the wall, but they may have spun it a little bit on the sticky stuff. I really don't know what happened. I'm sure the driver, whoever drove this, if you're watching this video, will tell us what happened. That's a bit of a weird crash. I guess you probably pressed the guide button and just about got back in time to stop the car from going into the wall, because it wasn't sort of going straight for particularly long. TJ was in the Alfa Spider and was actually in 2nd. He was doing pretty well with this race. There was rather a lot of pressure from a Honda Integra. I think that's a BTCC Honda, Halford's team. Can't remember. That was a while ago if they had them. As you can see here, it was a close battle. 2nd was probably the closest battle in the entire race at this moment. Everyone really did spread out in this race. I was looking through the cameras trying to find something. There's a magic smoke cloud over there. What are you doing, magic smoke cloud? Why are you there? But yeah, the field really is spread out quite a lot. This was by far the closest race for most of the laps. As you can see at the moment, TJ has managed to hold off. I was in about 8th or 9th, I think I was in 9th at this point in time, and I was battling an unusual rival. If the replay cameras are ever going to cut, no, we're not going to show it. Okay, well, I was in 9th. And I was chasing down an unusual target on the racetrack, and that is, wait for it, it's a Prius. I just pretty much spent 2 laps trying to catch up to this Prius, and this was probably the most interesting battle of my entire race. Not a usual sight. You don't tend to see this on a racetrack. A poorly modified Chrysler and a Prius having a bit of a race. I have to say, despite the fact that this Chrysler is only about 530 PI, straight line speed was really quite good. It was keeping up with a lot of the A600 cars. Admittedly, most of these were quite silly A600 cars, but it was doing okay. I mean, yeah, I was down in 8th, but, you know, it was alright. It's a Chrysler thingy. You can't really complain too much. TJ was still in 2nd at this point. It was just about fending off the Honda Integra when things went a little bit wrong for him. That's not gone well. That's a big roll. Nearly ended up on top of the tyre bundle. Luckily, he got away without too much damage. I'm amazed how little damage he had from that. He did suffer a bit of aero and engine and other things, but it wasn't major. Most of it was just sort of like lightish yellow, although then again, that is replay. I don't know how accurate it is. So he's come on to the final lap. Not a lot has happened. However, TJ's now rather slow Alpha had been caught by a Celine Mustang, and I think you'll see in the background there's a Silvia as well. This was by far the closest battle, probably the entire race, if I'm honest. So the Alpha, admittedly, it was never the fastest car in a straight line. Anyway, now he's suffering a bit of aero and a bit of engine damage, coming up against a Celine Mustang, which is quite fast in a straight line, and there's a Silvia there as well. TJ was having a tough time trying to defend from his cars. The Mustang thought it had got the job done and just didn't cover the race in line. So TJ got a rather cheeky pass back again. I'm going to see him coming up towards the final few corners now of this race. The Dodge Dart's probably already finished, to be honest. It did have a huge margin. Yeah, I think it had a massive margin by the end of this race. So as you can see, TJ is just about holding on in this Alpha. We come towards the final couple of corners. The Mustang is trying everything it's got, but now it's into the sort of the tight, twistier bits where it's not quite as good. The Silvia, I don't quite know what happened to that, because that was really close at one point. It managed to sort of drop off a little bit. As you come out of the final corner, well, TJ has a bit of an advantage, but the Mustang has the straight line speed. He's going to have a look to the left, doesn't quite get turned enough, and there's a little bit of a collision there, which is just about enough to slow the Mustang down. And there we go. That is it, and the replay ends there, and TJ managed to get 3rd. So, there we go. That is the first FailRace versus the community. It was a very fun evening of racing. It was relatively clean racing as well. I have to say, there wasn't too many incidents. I mean, when you have a 16-player lobby, there's bound to be the odd little collision, especially when we're racing all sorts of cars. And there also wasn't any lag. That was quite impressive. So we might be able to do more 16-player lobbies if we can keep that. It was a stable connection for once, which makes a change, I have to say. So there we go. Now next week is an interesting one. Rather than a class, we are going to be doing city car racing because people wanted to see like a little championship. So I'm going to give it a go. Now I have built 5 cars. There is a Citroen C1, Peugeot 107, Toyota Aygo, Ford Ka, and Volkswagen Fox. There is a tune for each of them on my storefront. On the FailRace storefront. So if you go on there, you can find the car, you can download whichever one you want. Now, just to kind of save you a little bit of time, the Ford Ka is the best in the corners, but not particularly quick in a straight line. The Citroen, the Aygo, and the Peugeot are quicker in a straight line, quicker accelerating, but not quite as good through the corners. And the Fox is probably the slowest of the lot, but it is the strongest. So if there's a little bit of argy-bargy, the Fox will probably be the one that comes out better. So they're the cars you can choose from. They'll be on my storefront, so you can go and download them. Now, how are we going to do entries for next week? On the forums, there is a link in somewhere. If you go on the forums, there will be a thread. You can find it under FailRace versus the community. There is a thread that will be a sign-up. So if you go on there, if you don't have an account, make an account. I know, sorry, you need a new email, password, username stuff, but it really is much easier for us trying to organise things through there. If you go on the forums, if you sign up, if you go to the FailRace versus the community section, that will be up there, hopefully, and go on the thread that will be for the sign up. If you sign up in there, you will have a guaranteed place for the race. If there are more than 16, then we will do sort of like multiple lobbies, and we will change who is in the lobby. If you sign up in there, you'll have a guaranteed place. Now, assuming we don't get 16 people signed up in there, the lobby will be made open, and then anybody can join from then on in. There will be a guaranteed place for everybody who has signed up in the forums. It's just to kind of keep things more organised and give people a fair chance of getting in. Now, the races will start. I'm going to change it a little bit how it worked from when I said last time. The lobby will open at 6:45. I will be inviting in the people who are from the forums at that time. When I finish, when all of them people who are online are in the game, I will then make the lobby public. It will be called FailRace, or you can just find host name, which will be FailRace. You can find the lobby, it will be open and you can join, and once the lobby is full we will go, and we will probably do 2 or 3 races. It will depend how long the races go on for. That's how it's going to work next week, so I hope to see some of you there. It should be incredibly fun and interesting and slightly mental. So, thank you very much for watching, everybody, and until next time, goodbye.